if you're wondering what the point of using watercolor markers is, in this video, I'm going to show you how they are so much better than a lot of people think. But first, let's take a look at the absolute basics you're going to need to know to make the most of this unique tool. I tried these Faber-Castell Arbor markers for the first time in a recent video, and I got to see that they are two basic techniques, the kind that we need in every painting. It's pretty simple with watercolor markers. You can scribble directly on a piece of smooth watercolor paper and blend the colors with a wet paintbrush. It's straightforward and easy. This is the most basic way that people would think about when it comes to watercolor markers because a lot of them ignore that there's a lot more that we can do. My Faber-Castell Arbor markers blend really well. As you can see, there are no lines that are left or visible. But if that is not the case with yours, then this next technique is going to save you. For example, you can use a palette like this one or a ceramic plate, something like that, and scribble with the markers. Then pick the color up with a wet paintbrush and apply that on a wet or a dry watercolor paper. And this will guarantee a smooth wash for you. But you'll see from the rest of this video that whether you use the first or the second technique, the benefits of using watercolor markers go way deeper than that. Take this snowman painting, for example. I want to create a loose background, and that's why I'm masking my main subject with masking fluid first, so I can paint freely all around. I start coloring directly with the blue marker, first technique. Then I add a little bit of black because the magic is we can overlap colors too, right on paper. Once that's done, let's go a bit crazy with water. I'm just going to add it to those white areas first so the painted parts can start melting into the paper. The goal here is to create an unexpected look for the background, and you can consider using your paintbrush to move the paint and water around a bit, like me. A cool thing to do for that kind of snowy scenery is to splatter some extra water and make some blooms. And just like that, a messy coloring turns into a fantastic loose watercolor background. Make sure to let that dry completely before removing the masking fluid and painting the snowman. And for that part, I'm using the same coloring technique with just a bit more care and a smaller paintbrush when I blend each color. This cute snowman tutorial is up on my Patreon in real time and accessible to all tiers for only $4 a month. My next painting is also available there right now, so if you'd like to join and access these paintings and the full library, head over to the description of this video to find the link to my Patreon. So with this first way of using the markers, you can see how they are way more than just a standard coloring tool that gives average results. The problem might be that the coloring takes a bit more time than regular watercolors, especially for large paintings. And that's why with this mountain landscape here, I use my smooth palette to create swatches of paint first. Then I wet the sheet, and I'm ready to add paint to paper, just like we would with watercolors. Pigments are going to spread out on the sheet and colors will mix together well because the paper was wet. And I'm working from palette swatches this time. Notice also how colors are a lot lighter compared to the coloring technique, thanks to the added water. This can be really helpful when you need a very light base. You can see I also rely on my paintbrush more heavily than I do on the markers this time. This makes the process quicker and the painting looks smooth at the same time. To take it a bit further and fully take advantage of the markers themselves, I'm going to add pigment on dry directly with my blue and brown markers. Because that's a power only watercolor markers have. Highly vibrant and opaque additions that you can choose to blend or not blend. It's something that would take a few more layers with watercolor. When here, it was really quick and easy to establish a strong contrast with the watercolor markers. The two nibs are also very helpful because one is a brush nib for larger areas, while the other one is a chisel nib and is great for details. To activate the pigment, I only use a tad of water to soften some of these harsh and opaque edges, and it works like a charm. And I'm able to create nice gradients between the paper white areas and the dark parts which allows me to make the whole thing look realistic as well, because now we have those light paper white tones, those dark rocky additions, but also midtones in between. So you can see how with the palette swatches technique, I established a base very quickly, and how I managed to combine that to the first technique, coloring, to max out contrast and get these small details in quickly. I still enjoy the more natural aspect of traditional watercolors more, but I think watercolor markers are super fun and easy to use, especially for beginners. I would really love to know what you think about watercolor markers because they're so underrated, and if this video was helpful in some way. So please leave me a comment below to let me know. And if you want to see how I create an entire painting with just a few colors, check out this video right here. It will help you simplify your watercolor marker experience even more. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.